Hey guys, Matt here. Today we're going to talk about how to perform reps, specifically if muscle growth hypertrophy is your goal. So there's four parts to every repetition that we perform. So there's the eccentric, the lowering phase, bench press, bringing the bar down to your chest, a squat, dropping down to a squat position. There's a turnaround. So once you're into that stretch, that elongated position, we're going to turn back around. We're going to come into the concentric phase, which is where we're lifting the weight. And then we're going to have another turnaround where we come back into the eccentric phase and we drop back down. So training for sport specific purposes, training for strength is going to be a little bit different than if our goal is just to try and build muscle. So three of those phases are hypertrophic. So they actually send a signal to your muscles to get bigger. The eccentric, the lowering phase, the concentric, where we're lifting, and then when we have our muscles stretched under load. That turnaround phase at the top, when we're either completely locked out, so the weight is just sitting on our skeleton, isn't doing anything for us to build muscle. Or even if we're holding and we're not locked out, we're in an isometric hold, and those have been shown to not help gaining muscle. They might help build strength at that specific part of the lift. So holding it right there is going to build strength at that spot. But for our purposes, for building muscle, that's not going to do anything. So what we want to do when we do our reps is we want to accentuate lowering the weight, lifting the weight, and pausing at the bottom when we're stretched. And we want to minimize that time spent at the very top when we're resting, because that's going to lengthen the set, waste energy, give us a little bit more junk volume, and can even potentially limit the number of reps that we can actually end up doing in the end. So we want to limit that phase. So first, the lowering phase. Bring that down slowly. You want to bring that down slow and under control. There is some research saying that that phase can actually be more hypertrophic, send a more powerful growth stimulus than even the lifting phase. So we don't want to skip out on that. We want to use that. We want to use that phase for building muscles. So if you're on a bench press, don't let that weight come down real fast where gravity just takes it and your muscles are being kind of passive. Instead, feel your muscles stretching on the way down, control the weight. Some people like to prescribe amounts of time that you're lowering that weight. So a 3-second negative, a 6-second, a 10-second. I like to just do a pretty slow and controlled, about a 2 or maybe even a 3-second. But a good way to figure this out is simply make your eccentric phase slower than your concentric phase, slower than when you're lifting. If you'll just do that, you'll be golden. You'll be under plenty of tension on the way down, and you'll be maximizing or getting a good benefit out of that phase of the lift. So now we've lowered the weight. We're down on a bench press. The weight's down on our chest. We want to pause. We're in that position. So there's a concept known as stretch mediated hypertrophy. And what this says is that we can send a growth signal when our muscles are stretched under load. So again, instead of getting down and just coming straight out of that and completely skipping out on that growth phase that we could possibly be taking advantage of, or even worse, bouncing out of the bottom and using that stretch reflex, doing either of those isn't going to do anything to grow muscles. So instead, take advantage of it. Nice and slow and controlled on the way down. When you get to the bottom, pause, not passively, feel your muscles stretching and feel everything stretch at the bottom. Get a good stretch out of that, 1 full second, and then come up. Now we're into the lifting phase. Because we're getting down as far as we can, nice full range of motion, and we're getting into a good stretch and we're pausing on that stretch, we don't want to explode out of that as fast as we can. Just especially for me, I'm 44. And so I take any possible injury risk and I try to minimize it as much as possible. So if I'm down in a really good stretch position, I don't want to explode out of that. I'd rather come out smoothly and then accelerate through the weight and move that weight fast once I'm out of that lowest position and coming up. So on a squat, I'm going to drop down. I'm going to get as low as I can safely go. I'm going to feel a good stretch for a full second. Then I'm going to come out smoothly and then accelerate as I come up. Once you get to the top of the movement, immediately turn back around and come straight back into that slow eccentric. Like I said before, if we're resting up at the top and especially really holding, that can lengthen that set out. It could even potentially be taking away from what we might be able to do in that set. So we might get less reps than if we were just to keep on going. The other reason I really like to not pause at the top, other than the fact that it's not doing anything to build muscle during that phase, is that I find it's easier to track from week to week and watch my progressive overload. So if I'm constantly taking rests up at the top, it's hard to say, did I get one more rep today than I did last time because my muscles actually got stronger? Or was it because I decided to take a rest for 2 full breaths during this rep. Or, hey, last time, did I rest between reps 6, 7, and 8? Did I only rest between 7 and 8? So I find it's just easier to track. Now, we are resting when we're down at the bottom, but I find that when I'm down at the bottom, I'm taking a 1 full second, then I'm coming out. I'm not nervous about coming into that lifting phase of the movement. I'm not going to rest down there longer than necessary. I'm always going to rest there the same amount of time. And I'm doing it every single rep, and I'm doing it on purpose so that I know every single workout, I'm doing it the exact same way. When we start resting up at the top of the movement, we tend to rest probably longer than we should, or not really taking a really purposeful rest at the top. We're catching our breath, we're waiting. And so it's too hard from one workout to the next to make sure that that is the same every single time. Now, there are times that we do want to rest up at the top of that. There are myo reps, there are rest pause sets, but those are very specific interventions for certain muscle groups, for certain mesocycles, for certain periods of time where we might be trying to purposefully lengthen a set. And we'll do those very, very purposefully. But the vast majority of the time, for all of our exercises, for what we're doing most of the time, we want to have our sets be consistent as possible. The other thing that I like about it is I'm not resting up at the top and lengthening that set. I'm just, once I know that I'm not going to be able to get another one when I come back down, I know that I'm close enough to failure that I've sent a hypertrophy signal. I'm telling my muscle that they should be getting stronger. So again, if your goal is to build muscle, nice slow on the way down. Pause at the bottom in the stretched position for a full second, come out of the bottom smoothly, and then accelerate through the rep. And then when you get to the top, immediately turn around to go back into another rep or rack the weight. If that's on a pull-up, you're gonna come up fast and athletically, then you're gonna lower yourself down slowly to a full stretch. You're gonna rest down in that stretch position for a full second, then you're gonna come out of that smoothly, and then you're gonna accelerate through. If we're any kind of a back movement, we're going to lower the weight away from our body, nice and slow and under control, get a good stretch, and then we're going to come up athletically, touch, and then we're going to come right back down. That's another spot, especially in back movements. You'll see a lot of people will get to that peak contracted position and they'll hold it. But again, you're doing an isometric contraction, which isn't doing anything to build muscle at that time, but it's tiring the muscle out. And so if you're tiring the muscle out by holding on all of your back exercises in each and every rep, you're potentially limiting reps down at the end of that set. So whereas you might have been able to get 10 good reps if you weren't holding every single time, and so then you're taking advantage of the muscle building phases of the movement, the eccentric, the stretched phase, and then the concentric. Maybe now you're only getting 8 because you wasted time in that contracted position. You tired the muscle out, but you didn't send as good of a muscle building signal as you possibly could. So incorporate that in, start getting used to that, start playing around with that, and build some muscle. Go get them. See you next time.